Welcome to our Cultural Talk Story series. My name is José Barzola from the Mount Sinai Institute for Peace here at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. Our talk story today will focus on Wominjeka, welcome, Wurundjeri and Dja Dja Wurung languages of Melbourne and Central Victoria in Australia with Victoria Higgins and Gerry, the GMAN Terati Lyons. Thank you for joining us today to sit down at our table to learn about Indigenous, in this case, Aboriginal communities near and far. Today's event will be live streamed on our community Facebook pages through the 100 Infantry Battalion Veterans Education Center, aka Club 100, the Conflict Resolution Alliance, 3K&D Kool N Deadly, KTUH Honolulu, and the Spark and Mount Sinai Institute for Peace and Conflict Resolution. Today, thank you for joining us today to learn about how 3K&D Kool N Deadly, Melbourne's first Indigenous owned and managed AM radio station, connects with the community as the modern message stick of today. It hit the airwaves in June 2003 and is proudly Melbourne's only Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander radio station. They are an independent and not-for-profit Indigenous radio and media broadcasting service. 3K&D Kool N Deadly radio station broadcast media service on the airwaves 24 hours, 7 days a week in Melbourne. They are the voice of Indigenous Victoria Australia. They offer our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community members from Melbourne and wider Victoria the unique opportunity to share their experiences, concerns, perspectives, and information with the wider community and neighbors over the 3K&D radio airwaves and internet. Well, before anything, let's start today's event by introducing our special guests. Erica Higgins has a long association with Indigenous media and has worked in the industry since 2006. Erica has worked in radio broadcasting, film and television production, sponsorship and promotion, grant writing, and project management. She currently works as the communications officer here at 3K&D, which encompasses production, project management, sponsorship, grant funding, and communication. Then Gerry, the GMAN Terati Lyons, is the general manager of 3K&D in Melbourne. Gerry has been in the broadcasting sector for over 30 years, including 16 years at CAAMA Radio in Alice Springs, including the past 7 years as a station manager. Gerry, or GMAN as he's most well known, is well regarded in the sector as an energetic and community-minded leader who built relationships across all sections of the country. He is an Indigenous man from Aotearoa. He has strong leadership abilities and embraces community on all levels. His diverse work background included director of JPG Computers, his own IT business, certificates in media, arts and television, health services, senior management, and currently on the CBF CGAC panel as a grant assessor, plus holds a black belt in karate. To get us started, I'm going to turn it over to Erica. Thank you again.
Thank you, Jose. Wominjeka, Wurundjeri Willimbit. Welcome to our homeland. First off, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we come from. For me, the Dja Dja Wurung people, and GMAN is coming to you from the Wurundjeri Wurrung people. I'd like to acknowledge their elders, past, present, and those yet to come, and their close association and continued association with the lands, the waters, and the animals. And I'd like to also pay my respects to the traditional owners of Hawaii, the Kanakalui, and any other First Nations people that are watching today. Thank you.
Well, Wominjeka to you all as well, from all your nations, your Indigenous nations around the country, around the world. What an honour for us. And I've always wanted to go to Honolulu and all those other countries. And but if you know about Australia, we've been in lockdown since February this year. And 2 days ago, in fact, 1 day ago, they let us out. So we've had no shops open for about nearly 4 months. We've had none of that. We've been in our homes and just going to work. It's been a very, very hard time for Indigenous peoples, because what's happened in this space is that it's brought up a lot of mental health issues, a lot of home violence and all those sort of alcoholism, all those sort of issues have come up because of the isolation and the loneliness, because not being able to visit our family and our friends and those that give us the energy and the strength of our ancestors. So it's been a hard time. So yesterday they opened the gates and they let us out. And to see the smiles on the faces here in Melbourne has been just brought tears to our eyes, because all we've seen is just depression and sadness and hardship. And now we're seeing the sunshine. The sun is shining today in Melbourne, and it shows us what the ancestors have done too, and opening us up and allowing us to have some joy as we head into the celebrations of Christmas and so forth coming up. So a big hello to you all, and to all your nations of beautiful people, First Nations people, Indigenous peoples of the world, and those who have come along to support 3K Kool N Deadly. Before I get into what I want to talk about, because I keep on saying I'm the shy person, I got my beautiful, I see my beautiful teammate here is Erica in her country, and it's lovely to be here. I'm a Māori from New Zealand, from Aotearoa. So yeah, no mai haere mai piki mai kaki mai. So hello to you all there. And I've got the honour of being General Manager for Kool N Deadly Aboriginal Media here in Melbourne. So we're just going to play you a bit of a PowerPoint, first of all, and then we're going to get into having a bit of a yarn or a gathering of conversation. So we're going to talk, and we're going to share with you about our radio station and what we do as Indigenous media in this space, and talk about the country and the people, because that's all different, all the different tribes and clans. And at the end of that, we will come in with José, and we're going to have some conversations, some questions that hopefully you want to ask, either about Aboriginal mob, Aboriginal peoples, or about Indigenous media, or about ourselves, how we got into this. So let's go to this presentation. It's a short one, and then we'll come back and we'll have a yarn up.
My name is Uncle Calvin Choco Howard Edwards, a Kalawa, Bunurong, Yorta Yorta, Muddy Muddy, and Tanarang man. 3K acknowledge the land in which we stand and broadcast on, the land of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. We pay respects to all our ancestors, elders, present and future generations, as we continue to tell their stories and be a strong voice for our community.
And so what you're seeing here is, that was a presentation, acknowledgement of country and welcome from one of our elders of our radio station, Uncle Taljum Edwards, who's been through a lot in his life, from stolen generation to abuse and so forth. And he comes back, he's an elder, and he comes back and he talks about his story, what happened to him back in the early years of being an Indigenous man, a black man in Australia. And those stories aren't unusual. We hear them time and time again of that era, of what happened to peoples of Australia, First Nations people of Australia back in that time. But you know, the sad thing, as you listen to us here, you're listening to me and Erica there as well, is that a lot of what happened back in the 50s and 60s and even earlier, from over 200 years ago, is still happening today. So, Erica, I mean, well, we hear those stories all the time. We hear about the atrocities that are done. And these stories are the same as what Indigenous peoples face all around the world. That sort of racism and annihilation and abuse. And we hear those stories all the day on our network. Erica. Oh, maybe you
So
can't hear.
our organisation, I can hear you. Our organisation is 3KND, and KND stands for Kool N Deadly. Deadly is one of those words that we say which means something is really awesome. It's terrific. And Kool N is the name for our people in this state, a group of tribal people, and they are the Kool N people. So our radio station is Kool N Deadly. And our major overriding governance is First Australians Media Enterprises, which is fame. And we will be famous for being the best Aboriginal radio station here in Australia and in Victoria, of course. And we hope to inspire other people to think about becoming involved in media and to give a voice to their own people, to their stories, to their culture, like we do, and to link up with other organisations such as ours. GMAN.
Yes, that's a very important role. We've been here for 17 years. It may not seem like a long time to a lot of yous, but to us it has been. It's been a struggle all the way through to get to where we are now. So we have 2 radio licenses. We have an AM one and a digital one. AM, they tell us we faded out here in probably in the next 5 or 10 years, but the digital platform is where most are going. So what we do is we very much have been upgrading our studio equipment, our technology, making sure that we have the latest technology that's going to last us and carry us on for a number of years. But also having the technology that the commercial sector has. Because when we do training, we want to train our broadcasters, young or old, in the same technology that they're using on the big commercial networks. So they're able to move into that area in the future, and they won't feel so afraid of going into those spaces. So with software and hardware and training, that's what we provide on the latest platform. But the thing that we do different, we might be talking about the commercial, about the community radio network, but really we're an Indigenous network. And the difference is that we envelop culture in everything that we do. This building and this radio station is a culturally safe place. So you can come here and you can talk and you can yarn, and you're not going to be judged if you suddenly need to go home because of family. Family is number one to us. So you come to work or you ring up and say, I need to stay home for my grandparents or my children or my sister, that's okay. We don't judge you, because be there for your family. That's the most important. Your job will be here, but look after your family first. It's those sort of values, those old values that we've all had, been brought up in, or most of us have. That's what we bring into our station. And when we have cultural events, we bring our staff, our young ones on, our older ones on to take part. If there's a special occasion, whether it's a National Indigenous Day, we're out there broadcasting, outside broadcasting. We're covering these events. And if you see some of those, I'm just going to stop stop sharing it. Is that what we've done here? I'm trying to, Jose, yep.
I can see you, G-Man.
You can see me now. That's all very good. Thank you very much. When we have outside broadcasting, it's about engaging the community. So we're out there, and we don't just show up like some media and do a 5 or 10 minute newsreel. We're out there with them. We're sitting down at the tables. We're having meals and food. We go there, but we go there all the time. We're not just a fly in and fly out media organisation. We are an Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander Indigenous station, and we go there and we become involved with the community, with our elders, with our youth, with our organisations. There's so many Indigenous organisations in the state that we connect up with. That word is important, because all those organisations and government and federal government, we are the ones that connect them all up. We give them a platform and a voice, and that is a very powerful voice. So we average on our network, we would average between I'd say 250 and 480,000 a day on our network to listen to. That's not including our national or international audience. So government want to come on to us, community wants to come on to us, and they are the most relevant. If they want to talk about having a birthday for Auntie May, we give a shout out, happy birthday from all your family. If they want to ring up halfway through a show, can we have a song play? We play a song because we're there for community. That's important. But the young training aspect of this is also very valuable. So we might have grassroots ones. Some's coming from community. I might just ask Erica to talk about the differences between the city, urban, Indigenous peoples, and community, remote community.
So for 10 years, I worked in Central Australia for an Aboriginal media organisation there. And when we talk about remote communities, they could be anything from a couple of hours from the main centre, or they could be a whole day's drive from the main centre. And in these communities, people remain living on their land. They've never moved off their land. They stay connected to the significant parts of their land, the cultural landscape, and also to the sacred sites. And they continue to practice their traditional associations and go through ceremonies. So in summertime, it's what we call business time. And that's when the young men go through law. And there's a whole range of protocols about not interfering with that. Some communities will actually go into lockdown so that no one's allowed out of the house during the day because it's business time. It's a particularly beautiful part of the country, and it's amazing to get to know the people out there, where English is often sometimes a fourth or fifth language. So they may speak Western Aranda, Eastern Aranda, Central Aranda, Warlpiri, Amajara, even Ayora, or one of the other languages around there, Pidginjara, Luritja. So there's a richness of language, and a lot of the time I was working with people who speak language, and we were translating advertising for government into language, which can present a whole lot of problems when you don't have words like tenancy agreement or landlord in your own language, because we don't own the land and we don't have tenancy agreements. So that was a real challenge, trying to figure out how we could use traditional language to describe these things. Sometimes impossible, so you just have to use the English word. I came back to Victoria to be closer to my parents. My father's 94, my mother will be 87 in a week's time, and they're starting to need more help. So I've come back to my own country here in Victoria, and I'm on Dja Dja Wurung land, which is where my family's been living now for about 6 generations. My mother's family came from up near the river and off a mission. So I'm not sure exactly which side of the river her people came from. But coming back to Victoria, there's a very different sense of things, because a lot of the people here were taken from their land, not through choice, they were forcibly removed. So they're like internal refugees. So we have people from the western side of the state that were moved to the eastern side of the state. And those people had never talked to each other in their history. They were sworn enemies, and they've been put together. We've had people from the south go up to the north. We've had people from the north come to the south. And a lot of people had their lives really controlled on missions. They weren't allowed to speak language on the mission. If they wanted to leave the mission, they couldn't come back. They couldn't associate with their own families. There's been a lot of fragmentation in our society here. So it's very different from what we experienced back in Central Australia with the community there. But you'll notice in the photos that GMAN was showing the very strong connection to culture that we have down here. and the continuing resurgence of that culture. And down here, people are again trying to learn to speak their language, and it's part of our role, particularly with outside broadcasts, to connect that again, so that through our airwaves, we can connect the people that are from the West, are from the East, from the South, and from the North. And we can connect them again and help them to feel healed, to feel strong, and to feel that their culture is valued and that they are valued, because for a long time our mob were not treated with any respect whatsoever. We're still struggling at this time. We have had, I think it was 30 years ago, a Royal Commission, which is a major legal investigation into the lives of people who died in custody when they were incarcerated. Since that Royal Commission 30 years ago, we've had another 400 plus people die in custody. And in America, we have the Black Lives Matter movement, and here we have a similar thing. Our people matter too in custody. And that's one of the aspects of radio that's very important, is to give a voice and to cover those events, like when we had a protest in Melbourne. And I can let GMAN talk about that bit if he's listening, because he was actually at that protest. I was in lockdown. Tell us about it, G.
Thank you very much, Erica. Yes, Black Lives Matter. We went there, and of course it was the start of COVID taking place in Melbourne, and we had thousands show up for that. But before I get into that, I want to introduce you to one of our young broadcasters who's come here from, and she's from a different country, different part of Australia. And I'd like to introduce you to an amazing broadcaster of ours. She's multi-skilled in a whole lot of different areas. She comes from a family of very strong culture and strong media background. And I'd like to introduce you to Hayley Mckenna.
Hello, everyone. My name's Hayley. I'm from a few different places, so mainly Darwin, which is called Latakia, going down to Central Australia, and then going to WA as well, Noongar country. So that's where I'm from. But I've joined the 3KND family around this time last year. So I've been here working as a receptionist and a broadcaster for about a year. And I just I honestly love it. I mean, I grew up, being around radio and television and through my parents. And I've always had I was always interested in it, but I came down here and pursued it more, and I absolutely love, 3KND. It's just a family here, and being the only Indigenous radio station here, we give a platform and a voice to, people that are suppressed in a way that they can't tell their story, and, people don't want to listen to their stories. So I love that we can give that opportunity to the Indigenous community down here to tell their story, and for non-Indigenous people to learn as well about our people, our culture, our history, and everything like that. So, yeah.
Well, Hayley and I were there were three of us that went to the Black Lives Matter from 3KND. There was a massive police presence at the time, and that the police were there. They had rows of police line up. Then you have all the police on horses, men and police force right there in a regiment, and then behind them another row of police reinforcements. And we went there to stand there because enough is enough. We're seeing what happened in America, but that is very similar to events that have happened here to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in custody. Hundreds have passed away, and there hasn't been a hell of a lot of an outcry. But as soon as, when it comes to racism, it's been pretty hard for mob and through hard times. But this young lady came from a very different area, from a real strong cultural background. We talked about, Erica talked about the multi-languages in Alice Springs. Now there's 128 sub-languages in Alice Springs, and they say that a lot of those languages, there may be only a few people that actually speak that language anymore in that area. you got 5 or 6 main languages. So when you have a meeting, not everybody, even though they're all Indigenous people from the region, they don't understand each other because there's such a diverse language range in that. That's how rich the culture is. And for us as a media organisation, we're there to give that platform, as are the other Indigenous networks around the country. But Hayley, when you went, why did you go to Black Lives Matter?
Look, growing up with my family, I mean, you know, my family's grown up with, you know, political, always standing up for Indigenous rights and, you know, healthcare and all of that. So I was exposed, you know, to that from a young age. So I've always been very passionate about, you know, my people and the mistreatment of that, and it honestly sickens me. And yeah, it's not a good feeling knowing that what's happening today, as I'm talking to you right now, that there's still a lot of racism and a lot of that mistreatment, you know, happening till today, and that kind of saddens me. So it was the start of COVID, and I was a little bit worried about that, but honestly, I don't think nothing would have stopped me from attending that, because at that time I felt like that was an essential service, and I needed to be there, and I wanted to be there, and, you know, stand up for my people. And I've never really been to a protest before, so that was the first kind of protest that I've been to. And, you know, coming from a small town, it was crazy to see a lot of people there, but a lot of Indigenous people, and, you know, from all different cultures and backgrounds from around the world came there and supported, you know, our people, and, you know, standing up saying that that is wrong and there needs to be changes in Australia, because we've got our own history and troubles. You know, Black Lives Matters is kind of catered to every Indigenous culture in the world, and you know, being that we have that opportunity to broadcast and share that and to attend those type of events is just amazing. And I absolutely love that.
Hayley is undertaking management and broadcast training as well, coming here. But Hayley, being a young broadcaster on an Aboriginal Indigenous network, how important is our role?
Our role? Well, I feel like every broadcaster has a different role to play. So I'm one of the younger broadcasters, but I play a lot of young music, but young Indigenous artists, you know, and having that platform to play all those artists and that music and getting our music out there and information, and, you know, just talking about the culture and language and everything like that. It's really important to share that, and, you know, share that with other people, especially other non-Indigenous people. And I feel like I do have a role here at 3KND, and as do all the staff members, and I try my best every day to fulfill that and kind of,
You know, being part of an Indigenous network has a responsibility, and from all our ages, from our elders all the way through to, you know, to Hayley, there's a responsibility to represent your family, your mob, and then the wider community. That responsibility is with us every day, because if we don't have that platform and get those messages out there, then mainstream isn't going to report it. They report what is fashionable for them, not the stories of the land, and they report what is a negative side of an event. We look at the cup as half full. We look at the achievements of the sporting greats, academics, those at home caring for their families. We report on all those sort of things, services that are offered out that other media don't cover. We do that. And we've realized and understood how important social media is, how important all those platforms. And for us, you know, as older mob, we had to embrace, you know, Instagram, Snapchat, not Facebook, everyone's on Facebook. What's the other ones?
Twitter.
Twitter. I'm twittering, we're twittering all the time. This mob here, we say mob, which is not a negative term, but mob, you know, we have to, community mob, it's about bringing all those different age groups into our platform, into our station, because originally we only played Indigenous music. And it might have been the clapsticks, it might have been the didgeridoo, it might have been gospel stuff done in language, but we lost a lot of our youth. And they were listening to, you know, they were listening to Beyonce and all of those the latest artists, and we were playing people, you know, back in the 60s. So we lost a lot of them because they wanted to be up there with what was happening around them. So we brought those top 10 and we brought different genre of music in, because the government was trying to say to us, you need to just play one type of music. So what they were doing, they were also directing and brainwashing and keeping all of us in one genre, which they thought was appropriate. They don't realize a lot of the community, they have that all the time, their own music. They have culture. So we have a mix in our network, and we have increased our listening audience and brought the youth on. We have youth shows, we have elders shows, we have black and blues shows, we have country, we have all those different ones, because why the hell should Indigenous people just be told they can only listen to their own music and not be part of the world of Indigenous music, and also closing that gap? So that's the big thing we've done, Hayley, isn't it? And all of that. She has shows on, but you know what? I just rang her while we were on. I said, can you come in here and yarn up and talk to this mob around the world? She just come in here, boom, and talk to you, just like that. How many times do I do that to you?
A few times every day.
After this afternoon, she'll be on Aboriginal television doing a segment. Well, we're at CBAA, which are national awards. So 3KND will be nominated for 6 national awards in media. And so we'll be having a bit of a yarn to them too. We'll be doing a bit of a Zoom meeting. Oh, what was it? It wasn't a Zoom meeting. It was one of those sort of, you know, camera events. But she does that, and so do others. You have to be multi-skilled to survive. So being Indigenous, we embrace that of our ancestors, and we also embrace what is modern to allow us all to survive in this space. That's important, and that's important for our network, that we understand the modern trends, but we always have that blanket of culture surrounding everything. We have a safe cultural environment, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a family here, like it truly is. And we're all very culturally safe in that we can talk about, you know, our culture, and even with the manager, like he understands that and he gets that, you know, him being Indigenous himself, not from Australia, but being an Indigenous man, he understands that connection to culture and how important and the depth of the significance of what it means to us, and the fact that we can openly talk about that and be comfortable to show that and talk about it, and you know, which is amazing. I absolutely love that, and he supports us in that really well.
Now, when she says that, I mean, I want her to say that I'm amazing, deadly, and awesome as well as a boss. I really like to hear that sort of stuff coming out of you as well. We use sense of humour in all of our stuff. We have serious times. We have sorry business when we've lost people, either through suicide or natural causes or through accidents. But we have each other and we laugh, as you all know that too. Sometimes you have to laugh when you're grieving. Sometimes you have to just do something that brings some joy to your heart. Well, as a family, we do that all the time because we have to. It's hard being Indigenous in different spaces because you're always judged. But we are about inclusion, we are about engagement, we are about closing gaps between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people. We're about giving voices and voices to those that are not heard. And that's one of the main things for our platform. But on top of that, it's also about education. And I want to bring Erica back into it. Erica, how important is our training and our education, not just for our broadcasters, but for our community?
Obviously, it's incredibly important. And the really amazing thing is when you have someone like GMAN, he has, like we say, 30 years experience in this. I've only got, say, 14 years. It's bringing that confidence and sharing that with the other young people so that they get to understand that they can have a really active participation in the media field. Because we have here in Australia, we have commercial media and we have government media, which is the Australian Broadcasting Commission Corporation. And so there's three basic tiers of media. So we've got the government one, which is independent, the commercial one, which is bowing to commercial concerns, and then we have community radio. Aboriginal radio is different, although we have to come under the commercial one because it's our media. And that's what's so important, is to train our young people not to feel any less confident, any less competent than those in the commercial or the government sector. Our broadcasters should be able to, once they've finished their training with us, be able to work anywhere and be proud of their skills and be able to report in a very different manner so that they will understand that when you're reporting a story, you're reporting from an Aboriginal perspective. But that doesn't mean that you're not reporting independently. It just means that you're empathetic to the story. One of the big stories that we've got at the moment is there's been some beautiful old trees at risk for a highway. There's been people camping there for over 2 years trying to protect these trees. Some of the trees are between at least 500 and 800 years old, and they're significant culturally. The highway builders are trying to cut them down. They're huge trees, and these people are protesting. When the mainstream media goes out there, they're looking at the number of police there and the arrests, and they're looking at it from a very negative perspective, that the police have removed so many of the people trying to protect it. Our perspective on that is these people have been there since time began, and they've been camping there now for over 2 years, trying desperately to protect their cultural heritage. Now the police have come in and they're removing them. The story hasn't changed. The cultural heritage is still at risk. And that's the perspective we're trying to train our young broadcasters to be able to cover in this area, so that they can give people a greater understanding of why the people went there in the first place to camp to protect these sacred trees. It's a very different perspective to saying, oh, there's protesters there and the police are now removing them. 50 people have been arrested and taken away. It's a very different perspective to acknowledge our traditional connection with the land and how we're working so hard at this time to try and protect it. And it's a battle that continues every day. GMAN.
That is so true. And what you're saying, there's a lot of sadness around the state because of that, and a lot of families and a lot of ancestors will be shedding a lot of tears, and many are at the moment. It's a major news story here in Victoria. I mean, police have been used in so many situations. you know, when it comes to protests or it comes through to events. But sometimes being in the media spotlight, a lot of those that are coming up that we're training don't understand the amount of power that as a media person has. So we can go to places, we can interview people that many of the public would not have that opportunity. So we can ask questions and put that other side on a platform where everyone can hear that truth. They call that truth telling. That's a very important thing. 3KND is you know, partially funded, a major part of it is funded by the government. So we apply for funding for our organisation. In the past, it's been triennial, so it's been over a 3-year period. But lately, they're doing a review of the Indigenous media sector. Again, a review. We must be the most reviewed sector in the whole country. In fact, everything is being reviewed when it comes to something Indigenous. But we're reviewed, so all funding in our sector has now been just for 12 months. And there's a review on in the background. Some of that review is silent. I don't know who's on there or what's happening, and the others have been in roundtable events or gatherings, which we've all been going through. But funding is, we get it from the government, from the Aboriginal Affairs, from the Prime Minister's area, and then Erica, who goes out there and seeks a whole lot of other funding from organisations, either project money. The project money, we might employ somebody to do treaty, because treaty conversation is happening a lot here in Victoria, in the state of Victoria. So we were lucky enough and successful enough to get funding to employ a person to do treaty, a treaty program and engage in a treaty hierarchy and elders and community for the last 2 years. Also in this space is Standing Strong Together, which is a women's program, women's violence and so forth, and we talk about that. All those are important and relevant topics to our listeners, because sometimes in all of that, there might be despair. They might think they're the only ones that think like that, and we give that collective voice. So people have different viewpoints, and that's on every week, as well as our youth programming, as well as our Friday night party sessions for the young ones and the older ones. We have old school songs, we have R&B, we have hip hop, we have all of those because we need to. Life every day and bring something else up. And we need to be offering those differences for what our audience wants. And they tell us what they like. So we have quite a vast range of different programs. We used to have a church program on Sundays, and the lady's left, just going on 10 years. She just left recently, so we're looking at another service, because people need to have faith and belief. If that's what they want, we give them that, as well as cultural beliefs. We strengthen those. You heard from Hayley. She's only been doing this for 12 months. It's just turned over a week ago. 12 months, she came in here. She could hardly talk. She was so shy and shame and looking down at the ground and, you know, answer the phone in a very soft voice. You heard her. Oh my God, the turnaround, that's what we did. We gave her confidence. One of the most important things for any broadcaster, Indigenous broadcaster, first of all, you need to identify and know who you are. They say, this is who I am. This is my country. This is my mountain. These are my people. This is who I am. And reciting that all the time is like an affirmation, and you gain strength in your voice and power. It's an empowerment process in your voice. And those out there listening, they grab that, they take it in and say, that's my sister and my sister, that's my people. If she can do that, I can do that too. And it might be something that they just need in that motivation, in that moment, to get them over something. It might be a song that she's played, or a song that Erica's played, or others, and it's a conversation in between those songs. So each of the broadcasters plays a genre or type of music that is also suited to their personality. They want to do that show. In doing that, the whole conversation and the whole atmosphere of that show, it changes. Because it's no longer just a DJ playing music. It's a person who loves what they do. They're talking to you. They're having a personal relationship with you in your home, in your car, on your headphones. That makes them different. That's what culture does. It binds it all in. It creates a whole different environment. And you know what? In that environment is healing, is understanding and truth. That's how powerful, you know, your radio networks and how you communicate can be. Is that a secret formula we have? Hell no. Our parents, our grandparents, our ancestors, all of them told us, you know, have respect. Have that respect for each other. If an elder walks in a room, you get up off your seat. You speak when you're spoken to. Well, I don't know where that's gone, but you speak when you're spoken to. It's all that respect, thank you, manners. You know? I'm their friend, I'm their elder, I'm also their boss. And even though I might laugh with them at lunchtime, if something is not right, I say it. Because they need to know that I'm not gammon, that I'm telling the truth. That if I'm saying something, I'm saying it because that's what I see, that's what I saw, or that's what I heard. And it's either appropriate or not appropriate. Was how else are people meant to learn? They learn from others who have experience. And you do that with a loving hand. And this door is open. They come in here, they can talk about anything to me or to Erica. They speak to us and tell us what's happening. From life's experiences, we are very lucky. From life's experiences, we learn so much. And we impart our knowledge onto them and we have an understanding. And it's not always about this, it's about this. Just listening. Because when you listen, you hear things that aren't being spoken. So that's part of our role as a management team. Erica and I are part of this management team, and we have others as well. We've got traffic, we've got programming, we've got specialists in other areas, and we have an Indigenous board that supports us, who understands governance, who understands our role and their role as that team. That's why it's working here and it's strong. Do we have issues and problems? Hell yeah, who doesn't? Sometimes you might fall out and not like your cousin. You might not like your parents sometimes. But we still love each other. We still get on because we communicate and get over that conversation. That's what Indigenous people do. You know, we can't afford to hold grudges because the world, the country and others can hold those grudges for you. They think you're given everything. Well, we're not. What happens here is that we fight for everything as hard as we can for the betterment of the people by offering those programs, those opportunities, and those training. Cassandra's on here listening to us as well. Cassandra is a lady who we met in Alice Springs. We met there. She was a teacher in community. Her and their man were there in Alice Springs. Alice Springs is in the middle of Australia. You might have heard of Uluru, Ayers Rock, or we're only about 550 k's away from that, or 5.5 hours away from that in Alice Springs. We're right in the desert. And that's where we met Cassandra. Cassandra was teaching Indigenous people, Indigenous youth. And in that process, she was also learning and understanding how Indigenous children and families connected and worked. Because if she didn't know that, it's very hard to communicate. It's very hard to teach, as a teacher, one form of teaching like this. She opened up and she loved it. In that joy, she brought it to the network that both Erica and I were at in Alice Springs, the largest Aboriginal network in Australia. We were there. Cassandra came along because we wanted to have a youth training program with the schools. She's a qualified teacher, experienced, multi-skilled in a whole lot of areas. You need to bring people that have the skills, but also have a cultural understanding. Oh, it doesn't work. Your kids are going to look and go, that person isn't good, you know? That person don't understand. So as a teacher, she had her eyes open, her ears open, all her senses attuned to the needs of what was happening around her. And she brought that to our radio station in Alice Springs. And in that she developed and grew and put into practice a training program for the schools, for youth. A lot of them, no one else wanted to know. She wanted to know, and she gave them an opportunity, and they shined. That's what we want to bring here. And we bring the right people on board that have the same vision and have an understanding, whether they're black or white, about Indigenous needs. So finding people like Cassandra is like a gem to us. And she's a dear friend of ours now. You make relationships. Don't matter the color of your skin, it matters what's in your heart. And we bring them into our organisation. Our first priority is Indigenous training, Indigenous people, platforms, yes. But we're going to bring the right people on board that have those skills, so to uplift and upskill those around us. And people like her, we have an honour to call her family to us. But you've heard about me now for about 10 minutes. I'm passing back to Erica so I can have a drink of quadra, a drink of water, and pass you over to a woman so it's not just this man talking here. You can get quite carried away and passionate and a bit crazy. But that's why it works at our station. Because all of us are a little bit written like that, you know, a bit mad. So Erica, you take it away.
Well, I was going to say, part of the backstory with Cassandra was that my role in the radio station is often behind the scenes. So I do a radio program Saturday mornings, and I'll fill in when needed. Sometimes if GMAN's had to have time off, I would do his breakfast show, although it's very early in the morning. But my role is to get funding in. So one of the projects that we thought we'd do was the youth training program. And when we got that funding, we thought, how are we going to do this? And then we found Cassandra. And she was able to write a fantastic training manual that transfers to anywhere. Any broadcaster can do this training. And it's using our modern technology. So we're using the same playout system that the major commercial stations use, or some of them haven't even got yet. They're hoping to get. So we make sure that we have the best equipment and we have the best systems so that we're not disadvantaged, because for a long time, Indigenous radio would get the hand-me-downs that were out of date, not functioning properly, and they were given away to Aboriginal radio because, well, they're not going to look after it anyway. We'll give that to them. They can learn on that. You know, we'll see if they're really serious. So we got Cassandra to do this up. She ran the program, so we had kids that had been put in diversionary accommodation, where they're taken away from being at risk for drug taking or breaking the law, those that were disengaged with learning. And they came in. Now, being a radio broadcaster isn't everyone's cup of tea. Some people don't like it. Some people like GMAN, they're all over it. But what this gave them was the ability to apply learning in an employment situation. So they were learning why it's important to learn to read, because some of these kids were really disengaged from reading, how maths can actually, or arithmetic can actually be applied, both in terms of, do you get paid? How much time have you got left in an hour? How long does a song play for? How long do I need to talk for? Those sorts of things, as well as learning general knowledge, understanding about listening to other people and not shouting, learning to lower and modulate their voice, learning to use music to express themselves. And when I had to finish up doing an acquittal on this project, which I have to write down how much money we got, how did we spend it, what did we do with it, what were the outputs, what were the outcomes, what were the unexpected things. One of the most amazing stories that touched me was a girl from a town in between Alice Springs and Darwin, and that's over 1,000 kilometres distance. She came from in there. She'd been spending her time at home smoking ganja, marijuana. She was drinking, and she didn't really think that she would ever be anything with her life. She guessed that she would probably end up having a baby and being a single mother, and that's all she would ever do. She got sent to a diversionary accommodation. She became part of this program and thought, oh, well, I'll just see what it's like, you know. And she loved it, and she became so involved in it. And she said, I've realised there's so much more to my life. There's so much I could do, and I don't need to sit around drinking and smoking ganja. I could actually do something with my life. I don't know what's happened to her, but I know that we really inspired her, and that it changed her life at a critical time. And I like to think that one day we're going to get funding to do this again down here, and that we'll be able to start training young people, because it's the same issues wherever, that you've got a disadvantaged group of people. They've got low education, sometimes they've got low employment, sometimes they've got low socioeconomics, and then they get low expectations, and they think, I'm not worth it, there's nothing out there for me, I might as well sit around and not do anything and not bother, because I've been knocked back so many times. We want to give those people the opportunity to learn, to get some skills and say, I'm not interested in broadcasting, but I really like the idea of doing wiring, or I really want to get involved in film, but I want to do the sound production. I'm really interested in sound production. You don't have to talk on the radio, but you learn so much from it. And being able to play the music that they love and connecting with other people that love it is such an enlightening moment for them, that they just go, I never ever thought I could talk on radio. It's like, I never thought I could talk on a thing like this with people from around the world. I was so nervous this morning. GMAN says, you'll be right. But I get really nervous about it. Once I get going, I can talk. But over to you, GMAN.
Yeah, she was very nervous. Let me tell you, Jose and I were talking to her. Jose goes, she'll be right. You be okay. This mob is all friendly. One of the things that happens when you do things right in community is not something that you go and you seek out for, but what's really really helps with your whole team and with their, and you know, with making them feel as though that they have succeeded, is in awards and in achieving things, or finalists, or winning awards and things like that. Those accolades reflect the whole station. And also, especially when our national awards, what that means is that nationally, people are noticing you. When you're applying for funding, you need to have those. You need to achieve those sort of goals, because those that are doubtful of you or think that you're not going to last in this space can see that, hang on a minute, maybe we underestimated that team. Maybe we underestimated the management and the operations of that organisation. So it's not just Indigenous awards. These are national awards across the community network. We've won international awards in other areas as well, in the space of our online presence. That was with Karma years ago too. But those things really bring a pride into our workplace. So these are things that come about And what they are is just indicators of, okay, we're achieving goals because people are noticing. What we're doing is just what we love to do, engage community, tell those stories, you know, give opportunities in training and that, support where we need to. Under COVID, we broke the world record recently in Melbourne as the longest state or place on earth that had a continuous lockdown. What a record to hold. Isolation, total and loneliness. We held that record. Thank God the doors opened up yesterday. But in that space, we still operated. And what did we do? There's a lot of organisations in Melbourne, government, non-government, community, that offered food support, food for those in the community, food for those in our Indigenous space. They offered that. But we looked at it and we thought, everyone's offering that. What can we do apart from giving them the music, talking about the situations, giving them updates every day about what the new rules and regulations were under COVID-19. And honestly, sometimes they were every day and they changed every week. So we were always giving updates. We didn't want to overdo that sort of community announcements, but we needed to give them the truth, the right information in its real time. So what we did, we provided health products like shampoos and fragrances and a whole lot of different personal items, toothpaste and washes, all that sort of toothpaste and toothbrushes. We offered all those packs, and they were very expensive packs because we teamed up with Rotary. I don't know if you know Rotary or Lions Club around the world. We teamed up with Rotary here in Preston and Melbourne. They gave us $55,000 worth of personal items to give out packs to families. We had family packs, we had men's packs, women's packs, we had those for elders. We gave them out all over Victoria to Indigenous peoples and the joy on their faces. They could never afford to buy that sort of stuff, many of them. Each bottle was around $25 to $30 each. We gave them out because they were donated to us. We delivered it out far and wide. That brought joy. We gave toys out, brand new toys to kids, mattresses to families who are all in one house or in their lounge room that needed to have a mattress for their children or for themselves. Babies' items. We gave sporting things, balls, footballs, rugby balls, tennis balls, all of that we gave out to community so that the kids could be engaged. The parents didn't have to worry because kids were at home. So we gave items for kids so the parents, you know, they're bored, everybody bored in the house. So we gave items that they could be engaged in. And we still continue that service. We gave bikes, second-hand bikes out to kids who didn't have bikes so they could keep exercising. Scooters. We gave all these. Is that part of who we are? We are broadcasters, but we're community first. We're community first. And what we did, and we gave out to all of them, they had tears in their eyes. Made us feel so honoured that we were doing something so practical apart from what we do in our daily life as a broadcaster. That's how you engage. We gave firewood to elders who wanted to do smoking ceremonies. They couldn't go and get the wood because they were in lockdown. We as media, we had permits. We could go wherever. So we teamed up with organisations like Bunnings. I don't know if you have Bunnings around the world, but we have Bunnings. And they gave us all this firewood to give to the elders. Some wanted to have community gardens. We went and got rakes and hoses and all those and plants. We did all of those things because they were practical. And they asked if we could help. We don't have all that money, but we teamed up with people and said, can you help, please? All of them came on board, yes. So sometimes you can't do things on your own. But you look around your community, you look around your environment, you look at other businesses. They don't always have to be Indigenous businesses. A business who has a product that you know that your community has a need for, and you ask, can you help? And they did. Even though the shops have been closed, no one's making money, and a lot of the business here will close or have closed, but they helped out. That's the generosity of people when you ask from your heart in the right way. That's the examples that we give to our team, to show them, even though that they are feeling like no one cares, to show them that people do care. By our actions as leaders, we show our team, you can do this. Go and ask. Don't be embarrassed or ashamed. Go and ask. There's no harm in that. And you'll be surprised how many yeses will come back. And they did. And I gave my team the opportunity to go out and deliver face to face to those community people, to those families. And the joy that came back and the tears in their eyes were overwhelming. They got it. They knew the importance of that engagement, of our role. Because it was, everyone else was stressed. All the health organisations were stressed here. Were we stressed? Damn right we were stressed. I sat down last night, was with Hayley and a niece of mine, and we had an ice cream on the street. We just looked at each other with emotion. We had ice cream on the street, licking the cone. That freedom, that opportunity to do that was overwhelming. So our biggest role now as a broadcaster is getting our staff to want to come back, to be able to feel safe in coming back here. Erica's been on her own out in her country, on her land, now for 6 months. She's been out there. She looks after her elderly parents who are elderly, and her sister at times. And I go out there to visit her. Maybe every 3 weeks, we drop in, take equipment out to her, as I do to the other broadcasters who don't work at the station, who are at home. And sometimes I'm the only contact they have physically. But that's important that we do those things so that our volunteers, our staff know that they are important, respected and valued. So as in leadership roles, which we both have, that's what we do. And that keeps us solid and cemented, keeps us strong. Obviously, Erica wants to have a talk too, or I'm talking again too much. Erica, you go.
Well, we were just talking about being nominated for national awards, and they are incredibly important. And I think it's really important to tell people watching today that one award that we won last year was particularly significant for me because I nominated GMAN for station leadership. And he's quite modest at times, even though he's very outspoken. The reasons why I nominated him then was because he's outstanding in his leadership, and in a way, a lot of us get caught up in the vortex. GMAN moves at such an incredible pace, we're sort of pulled along in the slipstream. I wish, and I tried very hard to nominate him again this year, because in this time of COVID, there could have been the temptation to switch our station onto autoplay and say to all the staff, it's too dangerous, go home, stay home and remain in lockdown. We can't risk our health because as Indigenous people, we have a higher risk of catching this and having complications. Some people already have compromised health and pre-existing health conditions. But we said no. GMAN said, let's work our way through this. We need to keep going because we need to keep our people connected with what's going on out there. And by Jingoes, it is so true. they have needed us more than ever through this time when they were isolated, when they were, in some cases, in high-rise buildings, locked down for 5 days, not allowed out of their rooms because of the risk of COVID. And the only reason they were allowed out was to get tested for COVID. And in some cases, people came to their door and tested them. Those people were stuck in a high-rise building on their own or with their family for 5 days before they could come out, and they weren't allowed to walk more than just around the building. Those people were going really crazy, literally. And some people have found, particularly getting up in the morning and listening to GMAN is their lifeline to staying sane. They get a laugh, they get a range of music. So they get old school music, they get the modern top 10, top 20, and then they'll get a whole range of really fantastic Indigenous music. They get interviews, they get stories from around the country, from artists, from musicians, from professionals, health professionals, from our Indigenous health officer, Chief Indigenous Health Officer, so that everyone knew what was going on. And then there's the distribution of the goods to keep our mob going. No one else has done that in this space at all, in Victoria, in Melbourne. So although I can't get the nomination for GMAN, I'm going to say it right here. I've given him the award for station leadership this year because I think he's done just an amazing job, and well deserved, GMAN.
It's just making me embarrassed and ashamed now. But thank you for those kind words. We need to bring it to an end, and a few people like to ask questions. One of the questions that kept on coming through, and sorry, Jose, was about our finances and how much. We probably get 1.6, around 1.8 a year. That's coming from funding and government agencies and all of that. We have high costs. Our highest costs are our transmitter rates, fees that we have to pay because we don't own the transmitters, even though that we looked at that. One family has owned the highest point in Victoria for a long, long time, and then that's where the main tower is for a lot of radio networks and telecommunications organisations. So you pay a high premium to get your signal out across a major space. So we have a population of around 5.7 million audience out there, potential audience. So we need to be up there on that high tower until we move into a lot more of a digital space. A lot of people go to, they play music on Spotify. A lot of kids do that. But you know what? When it comes to Indigenous mob, they do that. But when it comes to the shows, they want to have that broadcaster. They want to have that DJ that's talking to them, that's relating to them, that's saying things to them in language, in their way, using their terms, whether it's street talk or even elders and that language. That is more important, and that's why they tune into us more so than taking Spotify or YouTube. That's like other things they do when they want to catch up on what's modern or what's the latest video clip or what's happening on social media. But when they really want to get into it, they tune into KND. Our audience rate has really grown so much dramatically that shows us that what we're doing in our programming, our engagement, our communication is really working. That's the difference between those other platforms who are just music generated. They might have their own songs for a while. You know what? They might do that for half an hour, an hour, getting into the vibe, but they'll turn that off. And if they have another alternative that is for them and their genre, that's why they tune in to Kool N Deadly. That's 3KND. We need to, I hope you enjoyed our presentation. Honestly, we could talk for a whole lot longer, but as a radio station here, we have to move on to other things and got other Zoom meetings and podcasts and other stuff to engage in. But if you have some questions, we'd like to go back to Jose. And Jose, we'd like to turn it over to you and get you to join us in now. And hopefully you've enjoyed it as well.
Thank you so much. Yeah, you definitely did a wonderful job of covering the questions. I think the only other question that kind of remained was what kind of programs you have. Tell us more about what kinds of programs you offer, I guess. I don't know if you want to go a little bit more into that just to cover that question or.
Erica, I'll let Erica have a yarn.
Well,
Go for it, Erica.
we have, let's say from 12 o'clock midnight, we have predominantly Aboriginal music and a mix that plays until 6 a.m. So say from Sunday. And then from 6 a.m. till 9 a.m., we have the Big Brekkie show with GMAN. And then depending on the time of year, we take a program from a sister station in North Queensland, which is called the Morning Focus Show, which is a current affairs kind of and magazine style show, which is talking about what's happening in an Aboriginal space. So that's also including arts and cultural stuff from the Torres Strait Islands as well, which is off the tip of Queensland and sort of in between the tip of Queensland and Papua New Guinea is the Torres Strait Islands. And they're another group of our people. So they belong to Australia, but they're different to Aboriginal people. And then we have, depending what day it is, we have the Strong Talk, Ballot Dumba, which is about the treaty. So in Victoria, we're working towards a treaty between the Aboriginal people and the government of the state. So we don't know whether we'll have one treaty or a series of treaties between the traditional owners of the land here. So we're keeping people abreast of what's happening with that. Then we have the Midday Rush, which is a youth program. So that's for young people and they can ring up and they can, you know, the broadcaster can do that Facebook kind of thing where you're streaming what you're doing. And then in the afternoons in the drive section, we have Uncle Dan does his show and he has a sort of old school one. And in that show,
He drives us crazy, Eck. He drives us crazy, Uncle Dan. You know, he might talk about something that happened on coming to work, you know, and it's like, he's slow. He's like, I want to tell you a story.
but he has a deep philosophy.
He has philosophy right there from an elder. Oh my God.
And then we also have our COVID update, which has been brought to us by an independent Aboriginal journalist. And it's usually good news stories during COVID as well as updates so that people have something really good to listen to instead of, because for so long our news was dominated by the numbers of people who were sick and the number of people who died due to it. And of course, a lot of it was elders in the community care. So we needed some good news stories. And then in the evenings, we have different genres of music. So we have on Thursday nights, for example, a young man who is autistic. And when he was first diagnosed, they said he will never speak with other people. He's now doing his own program. It's the Rock Show. And he loves doing the Rock Show. And he pumps out his rock music. On Friday nights, we have Bulletproof Baby. And she has a huge following internationally. She plays old school hip hop. Saturday mornings, we have my show, which is Black and Blues. Also during the week, we have our Standing Strong Together, which is one of our projects, and that's preventing the cycle of violence in families. And that's a lot to do with strengthening particularly women, but also those that are, say, in the LGBTQI and youth that are at risk from bullying and violence in their families. Which provides them with information about what services are out there and a lot of healing stories, because that's the most important aspect. Once someone has removed themselves from violent situation, how do they get over it? How do they heal? So we have a fantastic program that's been nominated for a lot of awards this year on healing stories. And then we have Auntie Wendy on Saturday afternoons, and she has a whole range of music. Then one of our young broadcasters has R&B nights. And on Sundays, we did have a country music show in the morning before we had the gospel show. Hopefully we'll get our country music one back and we'll get another gospel show. And then we have Polly T. And how long's she been broadcasting for? Is it 15 years now, GMAN?
15 years. Yeah, long term.
Polly T's been broadcasting for 15 years, and her show is called Ringing 'Em In. And people can ring in and ask for a request. She plays 50s, 60s, 70s music. And then after that, we have Uncle Charles with the 60s Sojourn, and he plays music strictly from the 60s. And then we have a few other bits and pieces. So a whole range of music from, you know, R&B, hip hop, pop, old school, blues, 60s music, 70s music, and top 40s music, everything.
That's amazing.
I don't think, Jose, that we worry too much about the other platforms, whether people are streaming from home, doing their own radio stations or their own niche, because we're a broadcaster. We have a massive platform, a massive signal that goes out, more so than just a small area. Or if they're online, I mean, good on them. If they want to do cultural stuff, that even adds to the strength of more culture. We don't worry about that. We only concern ourselves with us and making sure that we're doing the best that we can, and we're trying to cover everybody in this space. So Netflix or Spotify or all those other platforms there, we all do that. Sometimes we even get tired of our own stuff and we want to go watch a movie. That's fine. It doesn't matter, you know?
Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Eric and Gerry, or GMAN, for providing us the opportunity, definitely about Aboriginal communities in Melbourne and Victoria, Australia. I really appreciate your energy, leadership, guidance to create a space for your communities to feel and truly just be at home in a broadcasting manner. I really love how you are developing future leaders to continue to be a voice for the community in such like a normal way. It's not something that you're going out of your way. It's just part of your everyday lives, and that's truly beautiful. It's also really beautiful how you are truly living the true meaning of community by the way you all treat each other, as you said, by being community first. So thank you so much for having, as you said again, that respect for each other. It is so important, especially in these shifting times. So thank you. I want to say a special thank you also to Hayley for sharing her story with us. That was a nice special treat for all here to just learn about her experience. And if you hadn't told me that it was a year ago, I'd be like, oh, she's a natural. She's been doing this for a long time. So great job. Last but not least, thank you to all of you for joining us today on this event. We deeply appreciate your interest in supporting sitting down at our table to learn about Indigenous communities near and far through our Cultural Talk Story series. Thank you again, everyone.
Thank you, Jose. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. An honor for us.
It's truly my pleasure, honestly. We're off Facebook live stream now. I will. Oh, I'll leave the room open a little bit longer just because people like to make some messages, but I know you might have to get going.
and just put up an important message too. And I think I'd like to say to Anne talked about multiple languages and how do we deal with multiple languages on a network. And when we're in Central Australia with all those languages, we look at the main groups of languages because many of them will understand one of the main groups. But having one specific which only has a small group, they still will know one of those other main languages, and that tends to get those communications out and that connection out. We would do specialised ones over the year, but here in Victoria, it's reclaiming language, because a lot of massacres took place here in Victoria, in Melbourne. A lot of the culture was wiped out in a lot of ways, and so they're only learning a lot of that back through historical records or through books, or rediscovering within themselves, or creating their own songs, their own way of language, of understanding that. So there's a lot of heartbreak in this state, different to where we came from the desert, where language was strong and so forth. Here is a rediscovery, and that's an exciting thing. From the pain comes that joy of them discovering themselves and understanding their new voice and their new song and their new dance. And all of that, we're there to support them. So I hope that answers your question, Anne. And that's a powerful question that you asked. Thank you.